Right.
I think is sloppy history.
Sure.
You need to really look at the full picture. Now, then again, I want to claim I'm not a Pike apologist. I certainly don't agree with Pike's decision to join the Confederacy. I certainly, if it is true that Pike was somehow involved in the Pea Ridge massacre with scalping and all this stuff, then that's very disappointing.
What you mean? These people were supporting their institutions on slavery and inequality. And you're talking about you don't agree. They wanted nationality and independence. They didn't want to call themselves white and black no more, like you do.
I certainly don't support what he did.
Right.
I do, however.
So then why the hell are you even talking on the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry Southern jurisdiction? Speaking in generic terms like Indian, why are you even on this if you don't support? You don't even know what is going on. But we about to break it down so you.
Pea Ridge massacre with scalping and all this stuff, then that's very disappointing. I certainly don't support what he did.
Right.
I do, however.
Then get the hell out of the temple, man. That's what I'm telling you. So we're going to do it like this. You talk about sloppy history. I'm going to show you sloppy history on your part. These people is crazy, man. On the Scottish Rite YouTube talking about they don't support Albert Pike. So then why the hell are you even on there? You need to get your ass up out of there is what you need to do. If you don't support the Confederacy, you don't support real independence and nationality. You talk about you Scottish, that's your nationality, but you tell people they're white and black. Dumbasses. But you're going to get this history today, and this ain't sloppy history.
Wants to deliver several others. Scalp, countenancing, peace and greetings. Today I was going through some studies about Omar ibn Said. I was going through his autobiography, the manuscript, and it was speaking of John and Jim Owens of North Carolina. They was both politicians. One of them was governor. And this is where Omar ibn Said ended up. However, when I got to looking up John and Jim Owens, John Drew came up. So I was looking into the first Cherokee mounted rifles. And it is documented that he raised, led, and organized this movement. They always have him connected with Noble Drew Ali, with Eliza Turner, who sued the U.S. over all this land. But it says he passed in 1865. But when you look through this, the first Cherokee mounted rifles.
You get that?
Across the cornfield lie what was left of the first Cherokee mounted rifles of the Army of the Confederate States of America, under the leadership of Colonel John Drew. Behind Colonel Drew's men lie the secessionist troops of Albert Pike's Indian brigades, including the 1st Choctaw and Chickasaw Regiment, the Choctaw Battalion, the 1st Creek.
Now also, this Indian, this generic term, People versus Hall says that white, black, Indian are generic terms. So when you're talking about the Aboriginal indigenous, that's the Moors. Indians come from India, and they assisted Great Britain in colonizing the Americas under the green flag of Islam. But this over here is the red flag of Islam. You dumbass.
Regiment and the 2nd Cherokee Mounted Rifles under Colonel Stan Waddy. On the other side of the Confederate Army lie Chaplain Downing's home, his family, and the rest of the Cherokee Nation. It was the issue of slavery that ripped the Cherokee Nation asunder, leading up to the Civil War. But it was also something older and much deeper. Deep within the Kiowa spirit was an ideal of a free and independent Cherokee nation founded upon the old ways of liberty. What's Noble Drew Ali say? The old time religion of liberty, equality, and community. These old ideas were being challenged by what? By a moderate movement among the elites, which supported a nation and based upon the institution of slavery, racial inequality, and radical individualism.
So that's who you care about? You care about people that got scalped that supported their institutions on slavery and inequality? You didn't support Albert Pike for fighting against slavery and inequality? Who cares what happened to the people? Cut their whole head off, dumbass.
As he looked about him, Chaplain Downing could see the effects of the crisis among the people that were his flock, but he
Also, they spoke of the Kitawa spirit. That's the Moors. That's not no Indian or no engine of the East India Company created by Britain. You don't know what the hell you talking about. Talking about Native American, then you switch to Aboriginal Indigenous, then you said Indian. No, it's the Moors, the Moorish Americans, dummy. Or I'm sorry, white boy, as you call yourself, white boy, because you disrespect your ancestors. If you're Scottish, then call yourself Scottish. And if you honor Albert Pike, then study and know about him. He's supposed to be your saint, right?
saw within it the face of that new nation founded upon the ancient principles of Kitawa. So we're going to go and look at the Kitawa Society, and I'm going to show you what I immediately found within the Kitawa Society laws. The number 7 also represents the height of purity and sacredness, a difficult level to attain. In olden times, it was believed that only the owl and the cougar had attained this level.
And you can go and look into your old, you called it the English Round Table Lodge or the English Table Lodge, which was taken over by the English, but that was the Moorish. It said it had a blue circle with a white background and the 10th letter of Hebrew, which is Yod, which is the 7 of perfection, the Kitawa spirit. And that's who Albert Pike was fighting for. So who cares if they got scalped? Who cares if they got beheaded? Because they was an elite that was foreign European powers colonizing the Moorish Empire.
Since then, they have always had a special meaning to the Cherokee. The pine, cedar, spruce, holly, and laurel also attain this level. They play a very important role in Cherokee ceremonies. Cedar is the most sacred of all, and the distinguishing colors of red and white set it off from all others. The wood from the tree is considered very sacred, and in ancient days was used to carry the honored dead. So immediately when you went to the Kitawa Society, you was led directly to the number 7, which Noble Drew Ali has, which is, the perfectness of man. But also here, the number 7 represents the highest or the height of purity and sacredness. And that's perfecting oneself, correct? So John Drew was treading a path, and he was basing it on old time liberty. And you've seen that there was elite that was trying to support their society off of slavery and the institution of slavery and inequality. I found it very interesting that Albert Pike was involved. How many people can say their bloodline assisted with what Ali's is assisted all the way into these days and times? Because now I'm regenerating it. John Drew in this movement of taking out these elite that was supporting their society off of slavery and institution of inequality. So the documentation, like in Albert Pike and the Pea Ridge atrocities, it speaks of John Drew, Colonel John Drew, in the fighting at Leetown at Pea Ridge, and in the aftermath of the battle was charged with inciting, countenancing Indian atrocities against the federal dead and wounded on the field at Leetown.
And Abraham Lincoln put a warrant of death out on Albert Pike and John Drew. So who cares if he got his head blown off?
But remember who they was fighting. The elite that was supporting their society off the institution of slavery and inequality. Then occurred the incident which made Pike and the Cherokee infamous.
Who cares?
Confusion prevailed on
all that showed is you're not going to come usurp these over here. You ain't going to usurp these over here. You're going to get the scimitar to the neck if you come try to usurp over here.
As disorganized Confederates celebrated their victory around the captured guns. Pike's Indians also wandered over to the battery site to partake in the hoopla, but only after a few of them scalped at least 8 of the Trimble's cavalrymen and mutilated several others.
Look, they was trying to take over the Missouri bridges, the water line, to get all the goods and services all the way out and in. just like the European powers try to take out the Cuban canals, the so-called Morocco over there, which Morocco is here, but they try to take out all the canals, and they was trying to take out the Missouri line as far as the water line so they could get the resources out and float them in and out and in and out. But that ain't happening. That's not happening over here. You're not usurping on this territory. So they got their shit scalped.
Scalping was practiced by some Native Americans before the contact with Europeans. The French recorded its appearance among the Hurons in the 16th century. Eastern tribes such as the Creeks and Cherokee were known to have incorporated scalping into their activities, but it appears to have been most common among the Plains Indians. For all Native Americans who practiced scalping, it was important for purposes of symbolism and retribution.
So you don't support the retribution of these Moors, because they're not Indians, they're not Native Americans, they're Moors. You don't support them getting their get back.
Taking the
Let's play that again.
Appears to have been most common among the Plains Indians. For all Native Americans who practiced scalping, it was important for purposes of symbolism and retribution. Taking the hair of one who had murdered a member of the family or tribe was a symbolic way of replacing the loss.
So they can't replace their loss? You don't support that?
The lock of hair also symbolized victory over an enemy and often was used as a decoration in celebrations. A form of mutilation itself, scalping naturally became part of a wider range of practices by some tribes that ranged from simply cutting the skin of dead enemies to castration. So again, I have no mercy for these elite supporting their society.
No mercy. No mercy for these elites supporting their institutions on slavery and inequality. Scottish Rite Southern jurisdiction, talking down on Albert Pike, talking about you don't agree about him defending against the elite, the Fabian Society.
The institution of slavery, and this is what they got.
It's what they got.
Back up to the top of this introduction of civil war on the western border.
I wasn't even going to come to the temple today, but then I heard these dumbasses saying this today on the Scottish Rite Southern jurisdiction, YouTube, podcast, talking down on Albert Pike. So get the hell out of the temple. He didn't even want to have that temple. He wanted an unmarked grave, you grave diggers. And you came and took his body, his remains out of the grave, took him to that temple so that you could what? Pull in finance and get people to come in, infiltrating off the Job's daughters, which ain't even the bloodline. Traitors.
54 to 1865. Among the warriors lie free Africans, Maroons, and fugitive slaves from the deep south, hoping to move on to Kansas and freedom on the border. There were many battles yet to come, but for this morning, Chaplain Downing felt safe. So it says there was free Africans, Maroons, and fugitives. So technically, they was all Moors.
Moors.
Free Africans, Maroons. We know Maroons, they always fought against any oppression. They was always ready to go at a split second. They're the ones who basically would throw the Europeans off the boats if they try to take them.
Now, in regards to people running to the north to get free, we have a demonstration in regard to, we'll go to it right now. Y'all should be ashamed of yourself, man. And this is going to come from a Grand Sheik's mouth. And this is going to come from a copper tone man who's a Moor telling you the truth about what's going on. We'll just let this play for you. Keep in mind, this is coming from the ones that you called Native American or Indian, which is really a Moorish American. You mislabeling the Moors, talking about Aboriginal Indigenous. Well, you ain't Aboriginal Indigenous, so why don't you go back to Scotland? Since you Scottish, why are you here? Why are you saying you white? Go back to Scotland.
Quickly for media, just get all the books. The series of the hassle of going back there again.
Of any kind, they denounced Swain as, quote, an apologist for white supremacists. Carol Swain has wrote about the experience in the Wall Street Journal. She says the group's attacks are a badge of pride for her. She joins us now. Hello. Carol Swain, thanks for joining us tonight. So when you saw the Southern Poverty Law Center was calling...
Keep in mind, this is coming from a more talking about you don't support defending against the elite that supports their institutions on slavery and inequality. On the Scottish Rite Southern jurisdiction, saying you don't agree with what Albert Pike did. So get the hell out of the temple.
Of their original purpose, and they had started going after conservatives. At the time, it was immigration restrictionists. So I wrote a blog, September 2009, and about 6 weeks later, my photograph was in my local paper on the front page with a headline that I was an apologist for white supremacy.
Did your original piece
retaliated?
Well,
That's what that ignorant guy said on Scottish Rite. He said, I'm not no apologist, is what he said. We'll play it in a minute, but we'll play back.
I just want to be absolutely sure I'm not missing.
And about 6 weeks later, my photograph was in my local paper on the front page with a headline that I was an apologist for white supremacy.
Did your original piece say?
So they retaliated.
Well, it's almost unbelievable that they would do that, but I just want to be absolutely sure I'm not missing anything. Did you say anything nice about white supremacists in your piece?
Had nothing to do with white supremacists. There was.
We'll go back to what the ignorant man said. Now, I'm no apologist. You are ignorant, my man. Ignorant.
At Harbor Freight, we're committed to keeping our quality high and our prices low. How do we do it? Unlike our competitors.
Of course, you're going to have advertisements and all that shit on there because you fucking sellouts.
Or federal courts had good representation. I think that's admirable. Making a connection and saying, well, Albert Pike was involved in, these nefarious groups like the KKK because he was connected, because he served in the Confederacy for, 8 or 9 months.
Right.
I think it's sloppy history.
Sure.
You need to really look at the full picture. Now, then again, I want to claim I'm not a Pike apologist. I certainly.
You hear the ignorant man? He said the same thing that the lady who calls herself black. I'm no apologist.
Don't agree with Pike's decision to join the Confederacy. I certainly, if it is true that Pike was somehow involved in the Pea Ridge massacre with scalping and all this stuff, then that's very disappointing.
Then get the hell out of the temple is what I'm telling you. This is supposed to be your saint. You're on the Scottish Rite Freemasonry Southern Jurisdiction YouTube channel podcast talking about it's disappointing to you because he fought against the elite supporting their institutions on slavery and inequality. Man, may Allah make all of you wake up in the middle of the night with Albert Pike's face lip to lip with you, bro.
I certainly don't support what he did.
Then get the hell out.
However, think that before the war, his attention to detail, his earnest, zealous approach to trying to address the concerns of the indigenous tribes, to make sure.
There was a film. The title of the film was A Conversation About Race, and I gave it an enthusiastic review because I felt that on college and university campuses, that there was a side that was not usually heard in social science classes, and that, well, I was not surprised. I had criticized them first, and I was criticizing them because I saw that they were engaging in mission creep, that they had lost sight of their original purpose, and they had started going after conservatives.
Group that exists to raise a lot of money for mostly well-meaning but gullible donors. Right? I guess if you take 3 steps back, look, they're a corrupt group that exists to raise a lot of money for mostly well-meaning but gullible donors. I get it. But what I'm shocked by,
That's what the Scottish Rite does too. Ain't it funny how both of these are molded? Ain't it funny how both of these are molding together two totally different videos? Islamism.
is how many media organizations take them seriously, pretend that they're legitimate. I get it. But what I'm shocked by is how many media organizations take them seriously, pretend that they're legitimate.
It's so city. They're the news people out here. And these people are taking SPLC as legitimate, quoting them. Playing games with you.
As racist and sexist. And today's SPLC is more of a partisan progressive hit operation.
Homeschooling. Yep. They talking Mohammedans in it. Ooh.
It's a conversation about race.
So we'll get the book. It's interesting. It's interesting. That
Heart of Self Moors. Hold on.
are you nuts? I don't know too many Moors who, they're giving up on the Moorish paradigm and they're gonna go do some nigger stuff or whatever. The majority of Moors, they're 100% they know the truth about their nationality and their birthrights.
You hear that? Not calling yourselves black. This is a man that is a Moorish American talking about this. Nationality, independence and nationality. That's what the South wanted.
There's a huge difference.
That on college and university campuses, that there was a side that was not usually heard in social science classes.
And another thing, if you're going into European schools, you can't say nothing that they do there. You can't complain about the school. You're going to a European school. Build your own school. Why ain't your elders build you a school? Because they let you down.
Is for white supremacy, even though I had written at that point 2 books on white nationalism.
Yeah, and not in favor of it, of course. So
No,
what was your...
What's white nationalism? There's no such thing as white nationalism. It's a color. What the hell is white nationalism, man? Where is white land at? Where the hell is white land? I know where Scotland is, so go the fuck back to Scotland. I'm going back to Cornwall in a couple months. Go the fuck back to Scotland and shut the fuck up. Damn.